everybody, Joe Kane here from Rocks Coronado, and I'm going to show you today how to use puffy paint to get an effect like this. Okay, so as you can see, there's a lot of texture on this stone, and the way I achieve that is by using fabric paint called puffy paint. There's different brands, that's a brand, but it's basically it's doing dots on your design. So I'm going to show you exactly how I did it, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comment section and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks, and let's get to the video right now. So as you can see, this is kind of a sandstone rock, and I just put a base coat down. I actually mixed some of this gesso, since this is kind of a rough rock. I mixed it in with some blue acrylic metallic paint. All right, just to get a base coat. As you can see, the gesso is white, so it actually made my base coat of blue a little bit light, and then I spray painted with some navy blue around the edges. Okay, just to give that sort of an edge effect around the edge of the rock. So now I'm going to switch to some acrylic paint markers. These are by Molotov, and they're just 2mm tips. And here's sort of the moment of truth where you just jump in. I know what I want to paint at this point. I know I want to paint 3 yellow flowers, kind of like sunflowers or whatever. And so I'm just kind of eyeballing this. I'm not going for realism in this design. So that makes it kind of easy, and also because I'm gonna cover up all of these colors with puffy paint texture, I don't have to be real careful in the process right now. I'm trying to do work as neatly as I can, but the interesting thing about using the puffy paint to finish this off is that it really does sort of hide any minor imperfections that you might make when you're drawing this out. So I'm just going to sketch quickly with my marker here. And then see how it looks. I mentioned in one of my earlier videos that painting is kind of a stress relief, but there are points during the painting that can be a little bit stressful. And when you're sketching out in paint, without any pencil ahead of time, it can be a little stressful. But I have the comfort in this case of knowing that I don't have to be real precise. So I'm really not too worried right now. And I'm just putting down the yellow first, and then I'll go back in and fill in. I'm going to outline this eventually, and then I'm going to fill in some of the orange. And these colors that I'm using are almost like primary colors, yellow and blue, and I'm going to use some green for the leaves. And again, you don't have to be real careful in this. So if you look at this, I think anybody could draw this, right? Got to be a little brave at the beginning. I see those petals aren't perfect, and that's okay. So now I got to select my green markers. Shaking up, you got to shake these things really well, because if you haven't used them for a while, there's a good chance that the color has settled. So you test them out. People ask, why do I got so much paint on my work desk? Well, because I'm always testing out my paints before I start actually using them. So let's sketch in some stems. Just get a general idea of where stuff is going here. give the stems just a little bit of a slant. Why? I don't know, because it looks good that way, I guess. Or I hope it's going to look good that way. And I'm actually going to fill these stems in with a thicker point of paint marker in a minute here. But you know, this is just, I guess I'll put some down and then add some other slightly different green coloring in there. Give it a little more depth. Then I gotta put some leaves on here somewhere. The thing about leaves and flowers, you know, anybody can paint a flower. If you're trying to paint a specific flower, good idea to go look at a picture of that flower, because I often take liberties with my flowers. You know, I call these sunflowers, but really sunflowers don't look exactly like these are gonna look, and that's okay. They're yellow flowers. They're gonna have some black borders anyway, so you know, they're not necessarily cartoons, but they're definitely not realism. So I don't stress too much at this point. Use this wider marker just to fill in. Some of the areas there. As you can see, I do a lot of thinking as I go. If you plan out your design ahead of time and you draw it out with a pencil and all that, sometimes it's a little easier. You know, you don't have to spend as much time as I do thinking through it. But I actually enjoy that part of the process where I'm thinking through the design a little bit. I almost see these flowers with personalities. So when I paint the leaves become hands, and they're reaching up. They may or may not, again, be very realistic, but that's okay. And a lot of this stuff is completely up to you as far as how you want to draw them out, or if you want to give them some expression or no expression, or just paint strict to the style of leaf that should go with the plant you're trying to draw. It's pretty much up in the air. All these rainy days we've been having here in Coronado kind of make me think of spring. I'm looking forward to the flower show here in a few months. So it's nice to think about nice bright flowers when you're dealing with all this rain. I can't complain too much though, because you know, people on the East Coast and in the Midwest, they're still in the, you know, the depths of winter, the polar vortex, whatever you want to call it. 18 degrees in Illinois the other day. So I could do a lot worse than sit here and contemplate spring flowers on a day like this. Also, thank you to all you people who've subscribed to the channel. It's I've actually gotten quite a few views already on some of the videos, which was not necessarily expected, because I know these aren't exactly 100-mile-an-hour excitement videos here. Watching somebody paint. But for those of us who like to paint rocks, it's fun for me to share the techniques and the materials and just some of my ideas, so I like it. and I enjoy getting the feedback from you. So, you know, definitely feel free to leave a comment. You saw me there kind of tapping the tip of the pen on the rock. That's just to get the paint flowing a little better. Again, sometimes these paint markers can be a little temperamental when you're using them. But yeah, I'm not worried because this whole design is going to be covered with texture by the time I'm done. Aha, he's got hands. Now let's do number 3 here. For those of you who live in Southern California or in Coronado, I just went over to the Emerald Sea Gallery and they took in a few more of my rocks for sale. They've sold some of mine already, which is amazing. Penny over there is so fantastic at knowing how the art business works and how to get local artists, and she really does a great job of featuring some of the work in her gallery. So I really appreciate that. I love hiding rocks and giving rocks away, and I really appreciate the people who contact me and want to buy the rocks. I'll be painting the rocks regardless of how I get rid of them, and it's all part of the process for me. So if I can sell them in a gallery, that's really exciting for me, that people think they're good enough to be up there with some of those beautiful artworks. So if you want to see some of these in person, stop by Emerald Sea Gallery in Coronado and you can see the ones on display there. The great thing about these paint markers, they tend to dry pretty fast. Now I'm going to take a darker green. I'm just going to, not paint the whole thing over. Just going to give one side of the stem here a darker color. It just, you may not even notice these subtle things at the end of it all, but it's sometimes those little things that you don't notice that actually make the difference in how the overall design looks. Okay, so again, I'm being thoughtful as I go here. I'm going to make the middle of the flower. This pen has been giving me trouble. I think maybe it's getting low on ink. It seems to still have some in there, not ink, but paint. Seems to still have some in there, but for some reason I'll get it flowing and it'll just sometimes not work well. Sometimes the reason is that the surface you're painting on, if it's too smooth, or if it's too even sometimes if it's too rough, or if the paint that you're painting onto is not dry enough, or any number of who knows. I mean, there's so many ways these paint markers can go wrong. So switching over here to a little bit of a different marker just to fill in these centers. I'm not going to leave them, I don't think I'm going to leave them black. I'm going to put some orange dots over this to make them almost like when you see the seeds of a sunflower in the middle. But got to put the black down first. There's usually a point when I'm painting, and I may have said that in one of my other videos, one of my earlier videos, there may be a point, there's usually a point when I'm painting a rock where I look at it and I just think to myself, this is terrible. It's not going to look good. I've screwed it up somehow. And I should just paint over it and start over. What I have to do when I get to that point is just keep going. I always figure, you know, if I could paint over it now, I could paint over it later too. This marker drives me crazy. Okay, so why outline in black? Do I want it to look like a cartoon? Like a paint by number flower? I don't know. You know, if you're doing realism, obviously nothing, virtually no flower is going to have a black outline around the whole thing. So it is definitely just a style thing, you know, a certain style of drawing. It really defines the borders. It can give it a very different look than if you're trying to do a strictly realistic flower. And strictly realistic is not what I'm going for here. I'm going for bold lines, bold separation of colors. Doesn't mean it won't have some depth to it, but I'm counting on the three-dimensional nature of the puffy paint to really give this thing the texture that I'm looking for. It's going to look almost like beads or some sort of fabric, or it's going to look cool, I think, with the puffy paint. So right now what I'm doing is I'm really just doing a two-dimensional sketch with colors, obviously, just to get the outline down of where I'm going to go with the puffy paints. As you can see, this is a pretty good sized rock. It's going to take a while to put all the dots onto this rock. Oh, this marker drives me crazy. Anybody else out there have issues with your paint markers and ink flow? I know people do, because I see comments on Facebook sometimes from people who are having issues with their, always looking for a better brand or a different brand, or how come it works for everybody else and doesn't work for me? Well, trust me, it doesn't necessarily work for everybody else either. It's just the nature of the beast in this case. And this marker giving me trouble is also putting me in that strange, I can feel it, it's that strange mood where I think, this is gonna look terrible. It's gonna look like a, you know, like I don't know how to draw anything, and can't make a nice neat line, and I can't do this. That's some of the, it's weird how some of those thoughts go through your head. Don't worry about those thoughts though. You got to be a little bit patient, a little bit zen about it, you know, where you just let those thoughts go by and don't worry about them too much. And just make the next line. Go ahead and finish the design, because, again, if it's so terrible at the end, I got plenty of paint. Now look what I did here. I got my hand, the edge of my hand in the black, and now I made black on the... Also an issue with using paint markers. Got to be real careful. But I can fix that. Again, this design I'm doing is very forgiving because I'm going to cover the whole thing, so I can touch that up with some blue, I think. So here's some light blue. Just gonna dab it in there because I want it. I'm gonna have to blend it in. It won't be perfect, but once you get the puffy paint on it and this dries, I'm just using a little broken paintbrush here. Try to cover that up. Just gotta be. Now I dried my marker out. The joys of markers. So now I'm just sketching out the edges of the leaves. Still not happy with this marker. And this is where you start to think, wow, did I really screw this thing up so bad I should start over? Yeah, I've got black paint on the blue. I've got messy edges here on my leaves because I can't keep my marker flowing. Stress. Feeling the stress. So I'm trying to be careful not to get my hand back into any wet paint if I can avoid it. And keep my marker flowing. As you can see, this is not really hard. It's not a complicated design. It's just being patient. And if I can get this thing to come out, I think the final result will look pretty cool. So I'm gonna just forge ahead. Try not to worry about too much that I'm screwing it up. This marker is not cooperating. Very frustrating. I'm just going to fill in the lines on these leaves. probably isn't very fun to watch, me wrestling with my marker. But maybe some of you will understand what I'm going through here. I don't know. Maybe you won't feel so alone when you're going through the same. Look at all this black paint getting all over the place. The longer you have these markers open, they tend to dry out. But if you continue to keep going with them, then usually that helps. But not always. As you can tell, like sometimes I'm using it and it just seems to run out of ink. So this is, but I've been using this one for about a month. So it could just be getting low. And just when I think it's getting low and I give it a nice firm tap, then it spits out a whole bunch of black paint. So you know, like I said, kind of frustrating. But I think it's going to get me at least through these flowers. I hate to switch markers right in mid-stride because in the middle of a drawing, because even if you use the same tip size of marker, it won't be exactly the same as the one you're using, because in this case this marker is kind of a smoothed off tip now because I've been using it for so long. So if I switch to a brand new one, first of all, it's going to take me a while to get it going, and the tip size is going to be slightly different. So I'm just going to forge ahead here and finish out these leaves, then maybe throw this thing away. I don't know. I might still get a little use out. Look at that, though. There's almost no paint coming out. Just keeps fading off. This might be the part of the video where I speed it up so you don't have to watch me struggle the whole time. Maybe not though. When I apply the dots, I think I'll speed it up, just so you don't have to watch me apply. How many dots? I don't know. 1,000, 2,000. A lot of dots are going to go on here. Just got to let it dry for a minute. Meanwhile, as some of that's drying, I can touch up some of this, some of these mistakes I made, some of this black. Oh, look at this, great. My metallic paint is almost empty, but I'm going to try to blend it in here a little better. Some of these areas where I smudged black paint, that's a little better. Looks like I'm going to have to get some more metallic blue. I like using metallic blue for some of these backgrounds, even though it doesn't look metallic on here because I mix it with that white gesso. That gesso is just kind of a thick base layer that helps smooth out the surface a little bit and gives the paint something very consistent to apply to. Although in this case I actually mixed it with the paint to make this slightly lighter blue. You can see the metallic blue where I just touched it up, but I don't think you'll see it much once I get the puffy paint on. I almost forgot. I'm going to put a little bit of highlights in the green here. Again, it's those little touches that end up giving it a lot of depth that you might not even notice, but it adds to the overall effect at the end of it. So just putting a little bit of green highlights on the stems. What else? Now I have this Micron black ink. It's actually ink, not paint, but you can make really fine lines with it. So I like to use it to add in a little bit of detail here, make it look like they have a little bit of kind of wrinkles, folds in the petals a little bit. Again, it's those little subtle touches that contribute to the design that you might not even notice right away when you're looking at it, but it's those subtle things, that those extra details that kind of make it look good. Now when I'm at this point, I'm seeing all my mistakes. I'm seeing everything that I could have done a little better or whatever. So now just a little final touch with the green here. And I see a couple of spots where I'd like to touch up with the yellow. Nothing major. Now I'm going to dab a little bit of orange in here, right on top of that black. This marker isn't flowing very well either. It's very watery when you first start using them. Now it's actually starting to come out. The color's actually starting to get a little better. So I'm probably going to add some back in over here, although it's still wet over there. So there we got some flowers. Now I'm going to let that dry for a minute, and then I'm going to start in Yep, it looks pretty good. So in a few minutes here, I'll come back and add on the puffy paint. Okay, so here we go. It's going to take me a while to do this, getting started. I've already done the petals, and I did the leaves with green. So now I'm just being very careful, adding in the blue, and getting it done, and we'll see how it looks at the end here. I won't make you watch every single dot. So let me pause here, and when I do the editing, I'll speed up this part. So I'll talk to you at the end. So, as you can see, the final product again, all those dots end up looking pretty cool at the end of it. And And I sped that video up, I think it's times 20 speed, so it took me a lot longer than it looked on there. But the effect is pretty neat. And so again, this is one of those rocks that I think anybody could do. You just have to, pretty simple design, whatever colors, bold. I like these bold colors because they really pop out when you're looking at it. And a simple sketch, and then fill it all in with puffy paint. So that's how you do it. Pretty simple. So thanks for watching. I appreciate the continued support and the comments and the people who contact me through Facebook or Instagram, hashtag Joe Rocks Coronado, and also those who continue to watch the videos. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm meeting more people as I go, and it's pretty cool. So thanks again, and I will see you next time here on Joe Rocks Coronado. Bye.